Good evening.
Evening, how we doing?
I shouldn't start a podcast with good evening because people might not be listening in the evening. Sorry, let's try
Mark?
again. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. Thanks very much. Listener, we're recording this on a Wednesday evening, and normally we record on a Thursday evening, and it was a bank holiday, so I don't really know what day it is. And I've finished work late today, so it's all been a bit hectic. But we're
Yeah,
here. That's the
we
important
are.
thing. We're here,
I don't,
and
I
we've
don't know
got it.
what day it is either, to be fair.
No, is that just today or is that in general?
Most of the time, but definitely this week with bank holidays.
Yeah, it does throw you off, doesn't it?
Yeah. Now, I'm eating. I'm eating my dinner. I'm really
Yeah.
sorry.
What's on the menu today?
Josh cooked tonight.
Yeah.
He has done, finally, his best yet barbecue sweet corn ribs, coleslaw,
Sweet
and
corn ribs. Tell me,
yeah.
sorry, sweet corn ribs. Tell me how that works.
So you get your corn on the cob, you chop it into quarters or
Oh,
something around there, as in lengthways. Make a barbecue sauce, marinate it in the barbecue sauce, chuck it in the oven, bake it. Ribs, they haven't got death on them, dead pigs or anything like that. Just sweet corn. But you eat them like ribs, they're great. And then he did a coleslaw and some potato salad, which he has nailed all of them. The kid is a legend.
So he's growing food and he's cooking for you.
And he's a
It's a bit like
musician.
having your own, and he's a musician. It's a bit like having your own, I don't know, living cook, gardener, entertainer.
No.
Fantastic.
Right. I saw a thing on PBN earlier on, plant-based news.
Oh, go on.
Hey, according to a study on finder.com, if you want the whole thing, finder.com/UK/stats-facts/UK diet trends. 8.6 million people in the UK are following a meat-free diet. And in addition to that, PBN says 6.4 million Brits plan to adopt a meat-free diet in 2024. If they do, the UK could have a potential 50 million people eating meat-free by 2025.
Holy moly.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
But we won't change anything, us vegans. We won't get anything changed.
No, that's it. No, that always makes me laugh. People say, "Oh yeah, but I'm just one person. It won't change anything." All right, just have a wander around your supermarket, and just see all the
Yeah,
things with the vegan logo on it. Not just
exactly.
down in the fridge area or whatever, but all over.
Exactly.
So much stuff says suitable for vegans. There we go. So yeah, maybe the future is bright.
Maybe there is a bit of hope.
Maybe there is some hope. The future's bright, but
You've been
hopefully not
away.
orange.
You've been away. How was that?
Have I been away? Yes, but we've spoken about that since I went away on the
Oh,
previous episode. So a good test for listeners who didn't listen to the previous episode. Check out episode 67 where you will hear all about my trip to wherever I went. Where did I go? Amsterdam and Disneyland Paris.
yes. It makes
Yeah.
me laugh because it's not very often we talk about which episode we're on,
No,
and then
no, because
you just drop it in, and I'm like, shit, are we there?
yeah, we are, which is quite crazy, isn't it?
I think it's mad. I mean,
We
I
love it.
figured we'd continue doing it even if no one listened. I thought we'd do it just for a bit of a laugh.
Yeah, why not? We get to chat to new people every couple of weeks, don't we? We enjoy it, even if nobody else does. Dear, it's all good fun. It's all good fun. We've got, do you know what? Oh, I'll tell you what. I met up with our friend Martin from Vistopia
Yes, you did.
at the
Super
end of
jealous.
last week. Just to make you jealous, he was stopping over in London on his way from Sweden to Bristol, where he performed at the Bristol Vegan Fair. I called it Veg Fest, I think, but it's Vegan Fair at the weekend. So I met him in London just before he went off to Bristol, and we had a lovely chat. And he told me how earlier in that week he'd woken up in the morning with a tune in his head,
All
and
right.
he went and recorded like a demo of this tune. I was like, "You're like Paul McCartney, who just woke up with yesterday in his head and called it eggs. Well, actually, he called it eggs and bacon, which isn't very vegan. So, but I know I've said this before on the pod with other songwriters, but it just blows my mind that someone wakes up with a tune in their head and then has the ability to make it into music, into something listenable. Absolutely blows my mind.
Yeah,
And
songwriting always shocks me anyway. The whole process. I
yes,
know you asked a couple of guests, like, what's the process? And the process, everyone's process is going to be different, but it's like, how do you even start?
true. And talking of guests from Sweden, our guest for this episode is in the lobby. So why don't we let them in?
Coffee with milk, please.
We only have plant milk. Is that okay?
Stop! It's not okay. And if something like this has happened to you, you need to call me, Seymour Loudermilk, right now. If you've had your feelings hurt by a vegan, you could be entitled to compensation.
Oat milk, soy milk, almond milk?
No thanks. I'll have louder milk. And I'll see you in court.
Get more with Seymour. Call 866-HATE-VEGANS. HateVegans.com.
Suits you. We don't. Yeah, thanks for joining us. It's great. You're our third guest. Well, actually, you're not from Sweden, are you? But you're in Sweden.
No, I'm British, but living in Sweden. So yeah, I know two of the Swedish guests you've had on already. So yeah, that's nice. It feels like a little community. You'll have to come over and do a podcast episode. Audience with Sweden or something.
Yeah, I mean,
When we get funding, I'm on my way.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it?
I was going to say, as soon as someone pays for it, we'll be there. No worries.
We'll get Oatly to sponsor it.
Yes. Now you're talking.
They do a lot of silent sponsoring. We've had them sponsor stuff, but they don't do it publicly. I mean, it's kind of a strange thing. Maybe I shouldn't say that on the podcast.
No, maybe I'll edit that out unless they don't sponsor us, in which case I'll put it in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. All right, Giles, I'm just going to do the intro.
Of course.
Actually, the intro that you sent. So if it's inaccurate, it's your fault, not mine. Okay.
Perfect.
Our guest today is Giles, aka Vegan Design. He is an award-winning industrial designer from the UK, currently residing in Stockholm. He lived and worked in Tokyo for a total of 14 years, designing consumer electronics for several big brands. Products he designed have been sold in the Apple Store in Tokyo and several electronics retailers around the globe. He's listed as an inventor in over 10 registered patents, which we are definitely going to get into. 5 years ago, when living in Germany, Giles went vegan, and in his spare time in between designing, he's built up a vegan activism platform on TikTok called Vegan Design that has picked up 55,000 followers and over 3 million likes. Using humour, live debates, and various strategies to speak up for our fellow animals, Vegan Design has become one of the biggest vegan activism accounts on TikTok. Welcome, Giles.
Oh, thanks so much, guys.
That's I mean, that's basically going to be our whole episode, just asking you about the things that are in the intro there, because... But tell us...
I mean, a lot of that was about like work, boring design stuff. So I'm okay to talk more about veganism. So no worries.
Well, okay, fine. We will get onto that, I promise. Tell us about how did you get to Tokyo, and then how did you end up in Stockholm?
Sure. So, yeah, I studied design in London, and then as a graduate, I was picked by Mitsubishi to go and work in Japan. And then I was like 22, so I'd never worked. It was like my first job was out in Japan. It was quite a big step to move to Japan. So that's basically how I ended up there. And then, I worked for Toshiba after that and just ended up, staying a long time.
That's
amazing.
Yeah.
So what were the products, if you're happy to talk about, what were the products that you sold that were sold in the Apple Store? Am I like using one now or something? Is that, what's the store?
I don't know. I doubt it though. But yeah, they were pen tablets for Wacom. So it's basically instead of a mouse, you use a pen to draw on a tablet. So it's for like graphic designers and so on. So it's basically, it's like a peripheral tool. But yeah, they sold them in the Apple Store and lots of stores.
Fantastic. So being listed as an inventor, do you get like, maybe this is an inappropriate question, do you get like a cut every time an item gets sold? Or is it you invent it and then you sell it and then that's it?
I mean, I've always been an in-house designer, which means you basically work for a company, right? So that means that you're a salaried employee. So there is like a small thing that I do get from some of those things, but they're more like just for the paperwork. So it's such a tiny amount. The agreement is because you work for them and you get a salary, that's nothing really. So it's not like you get a royalty for every product sold or anything like that.
Okay. And so how did you get into the sort of designing thing? What was it in school or in your home life that sort of piqued your interest and got you into university and that?
Yeah, I mean, my dad was an engineer and my mum, I mean, she was creative. She taught art. She's a teacher, but she also taught art. So I guess I was always between kind of arts and sciences and design, industrial design specifically. That was kind of like I felt at home there. So yeah, that's kind of found my space. And then pretty early on, I decided I wanted to be an industrial designer, even when lots of teachers didn't really understand what does that even mean. So yeah. I was quite quick to decide. I think I was 16 when I decided that's the job I wanted, and I just did everything from that point on to become an industrial designer. But to be honest, like now, I feel more. I mean, I love design. I always will. I always like creativity, but like my biggest passion is like talking about veganism. It's funny, isn't it? Like I think it's interesting. You like in different periods of your life, you can have like different passions and. I think, whatever I'll do, I'll always have a passion for design. But I think right now, for me, that's a much stronger kind of driving purpose, I think, is to talk about veganism.
Is there a
you're
way
in your vegan era?
Collaborating the two, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's something I'm thinking about. I've like done lots of writing as well. So not lots, but I've done a bit of writing. I've done stuff where I've like for plant-based news. So I've written a few articles about like veganism and stuff. One of them I've tried to combine the kind of design field with about veganism. So I've written one which was talking about obviously like veganism in terms of like furniture design and lots of areas that people don't maybe think about, the ways that animals are exploited and used. Because, I mean, I feel like in vegan circles, we kind of talk a lot about food and all of that. But, in my area, in the industry, I feel like it's so off the radar. Like people are not, you go to these kind of design fairs and they've got like leather chairs and all of that. And it's just not something they're even beginning to think about. So, yeah, I thought that was kind of an area where I can combine, but it's difficult to be honest. I'm also happy doing the TikTok and talking about that in my free time. So it doesn't have to be about design. So that's all good.
That's fair. That's fair.
Tell us about the TikTok account then, Vegan Design. What's the background of that?
I mean, basically, it started from lockdown, I guess. I started doing activism. So, I mean, or should I say how I went vegan first, or should I jump into activism first?
Go on then.
So,
give us the origin story.
I don't know. All right, yeah. So otherwise, it was probably in the wrong order. But yeah, I mean, I think living in Japan was kind of the first. I mean, we talk about like seeds of like planted seeds, right? So I think living in Japan was the first time for me where I started to reflect on my upbringing in the UK and thinking about, when you live abroad, you see your own upbringing or your own culture with some kind of perspective. And obviously there's things where you maybe appreciate things that you didn't notice before, but there's other stuff where it's like, well, it doesn't really make sense. And one of the things for me, like living in Japan, there was a documentary called The Cove about dolphin hunting and whaling. I don't know if you remember that, but basically it was like all about this terrible practice, right, in Japan of hunting dolphins. And there was a lot of discussion. It won like the best documentary at the Oscars, so it was like a big international discussion. And I feel like in the UK, if you're against like dolphin and whaling and all of that, you don't really have any pushback because everyone agrees with you anyway, right? Maybe if you're talking about you don't want to put pigs in gas chambers, you'd have an argument. But if you want to say like, oh, I don't think we should kill dolphins, no one's going to argue with you. So I think the interesting thing is in Japan, I did have that pushback, right? I had people saying to me, well, if they put cameras in the chicken farms and the pig farms in the UK, you wouldn't like what you see either, right? So I had, Japanese friends and colleagues kind of able to kind of push back against me. And I think that made me kind of face my own hypocrisy and see lots of those kind of things that don't quite add up in your own upbringing. So yeah, that's kind of one of the first things that led me to veganism. And then, yeah, when I moved to Germany, I switched to vegetarianism, thinking, that like many of us do. thinking, oh, that's what I need to do. And then, you do a bit more digging and you realize, okay, this doesn't make sense either. I've got to go vegan. So yeah, that's kind of my origin story. But then to jump to your question about TikTok. So basically, I think that started. I mean, I went vegan around early 2019, late 2018, I think. And so then it was pretty soon into like lockdown and all of that, like in the years following that. So in that time, I think like many people, you kind of get stuck into looking online on YouTube and all of this, and seeing lots of activism and stuff. And I was quite inspired by lots of that, like Earthling Ed and so on. And I'd done a bit of writing with, plant-based news, submitting articles. I did one on Red Tractor, the kind of farm standards, and I was like visualizing, because I was also trying to use like design skills, right? So there was all these things about stocking densities and how many chickens you can put in a certain area. And, when you start to visualize that, it's absolutely horrific, right? So I kind of visualized it and sent it to Robbie from Plant-Based News, and he was like, oh yeah, why don't you put it together in an article? So I did that. And I think from there, I kind of found that actually I quite enjoy talking about veganism, and it's something I want to do more. And yeah, TikTok was just a platform where you could talk, but it also wasn't to your friends necessarily, like Instagram and Facebook. It's like, it's a little bit, it's not bad. I mean, of course it's good to do activism to your friends and all that, but you feel a bit more guarded, or you're like watching how you're expressing yourself because you don't want to be judged. Whereas like TikTok, it's just like throwing your video over a wall and like all these random people looking at it. So you don't really care about any of that. I mean, maybe someone might see it, but and now maybe I have to worry about that a bit more. Now I've got more followers. But anyway, I kind of like that it was much more free. And I don't know, you guys probably experience it as well. It's really hard to talk to friends and family, right, about veganism.
Very much, because you don't want to come over as that vegan, that pushy vegan, that preachy vegan, but you also do really want your nearest and dearest to understand, because they're the ones who you care about the most, and that's a real challenge. Definitely.
So straight up the same as you. I find that the hardest. So like talking to strangers and like doing live debates and stuff, I found that quite not
and also,
easy, but
the conversations about veganism that you have with your friends and family are normally when you've only just gone vegan and you don't really know a huge amount about what you're talking about, because they invite you around for dinner and you say, oh, by the way, I don't eat meat and dairy, and then they're like, well, what the hell do you eat then, and why is that? And then you're like, exactly. That's quite tricky with when it's in the early days.
Absolutely. And I think I also like with TikTok as well, there's like other activists as well, so you kind of build up a little bit of a like community, and you're kind of sharing ideas. I think one thing that, comparing to when I first went vegan, like I said, I was talking about like Red Tractor and these terrible standards and stuff. And now I guess with what I'm doing on TikTok now, I'm focusing less on that stuff, because I kind of realized I've now got to a point where I'm thinking, talking about cruelty and welfare and all of this, of course it's terrible, and, those standards are terrible. But at the end of the day, like, it doesn't really matter how we do it, because I feel like if you talk about, well, how much space do you give a chicken? The problem is when you're talking to non-vegans, they might believe that, okay, so the solution is we should give them more space. Is that what you're asking for?
Yes.
And then it's like, well, no, actually, we're not even asking for that. So then we're kind of confusing people, because we're like, no, it's terrible, but we also don't want you to give them more space. So it's like, now I'm trying to be, jump straight to talk about animal rights, not animal welfare, and not talk about cruelty so much, because I think that's something I talked, I emailed you about, Chris Packham's speech at Camp Out. I talk about that too. But that's something that a big topic now on TikTok with lots of people, that we're kind of talking about how to, and it's not a new thing. Of course, the like welfare and rights has always been in the movement and that constant discussion. But I feel like, that's something that I've kind of learned and realized through doing this activism.
Yeah. Animal welfare is kind of like a very small step on the very long ladder to animal rights and animal equality, isn't it? It's
exactly.
It's great that there is better treatment of animals at the moment, but in the long run, we don't want them in there at all, let alone with a A3 piece of paper instead of an A4 piece of paper.
Yeah, exactly.
The amount of space.
And and I mean, the way I kind of talk to people about it is like non-vegans about it is saying like, we're not asking for better methods of exploitation. We're not asking for better methods of murdering, right? We're just asking, like, the same as human rights, right? We don't like, you know, I mean, I'm gay, so I saw this speech by, you should have him on, he's a great speaker, Faraz Hassini, and he was doing last year in Copenhagen. So he does a lot. You had Jamie Logan on, right? So he does a lot of stuff, content with her as well. So yeah, he did a speech. He's also queer, and he said, like, he was talking about Iran, where he's from, and he said the way we talk about welfare, it would be a bit like, you know, when they're hanging gay people in Iran, it would be like, rather than stopping hanging, just being like, oh yeah, should we give them like softer ropes, right? So it becomes this kind of ludicrous argument where you're like, welfare is just like talking about, okay, let's carry on doing it, but just like find better ways to do it, which is ridiculous. And I think as vegans, we have to be really clear about what we're actually asking for, because a lot of non-vegans kind of misunderstand us. At the same time, I do get that you know, just talking about rights, it can get very kind of philosophical and academic, and it's like, okay, but how do you bring people in by saying like we shouldn't use an animal? Like, it's much easier to grab attention, pig thrashing and screaming in a gas chamber, you know, that gets people's attention. But then, like, I guess what I'm hoping, or I'm trying to do now, is like bring people quickly across to talking about rights. Sorry, that was a very long answer.
No, that's fine. Good.
It is. I don't know if it's a difficult one as such, but it's that thing of, like you're saying, that like you watch Joey Carvstrong's stuff and Earthling Ed and anyone that's doing that activism stuff, and they're like, they get into debates with people about the pathway to the murder. And it never matters what the pathway is. The murder's what matters.
Yes.
You know, the crux of it is that I know I keep repeating myself across episodes, but at the end of the day, an animal is dying. And it doesn't matter how they got there. They shouldn't be dying for our consumption. It just sucks.
Yeah, I mean, it is, you're right. It's not about how we get there or how we do it. And I think there's so much, you know, and that's what, you know, upset me about that Chris Packham speech at Vegan Camp Out. Like, so many times he was saying, like, animal welfare, or like vegans want non-vegans to sign up to better chicken commitment. And I'm thinking, do we? I'm not asking for that. No. So, like, I feel like it was just so disappointing. And I mean, I really respect him. I've grown up watching him on TV and the Really Wild Show, and like, I still think he does amazing stuff for animals, but I just feel like, as someone who's, you know, got that position in the RSPCA, it just wasn't good enough what he said.
No, I think
he was on a couple of years ago as well, wasn't he? And he didn't get booed off, but he'd said, I've become a vegan because you lot made me, basically, because he got, you know, working in that field, you know, caring for animals, you know, doing all the stuff that he's doing for conservation, and then not being vegan made him a hypocrite. So he's made that change. But then when my wife came back from Camp Out, and she was saying there was a load of stuff going on about Chris Packham, about the fact that he's the president, the vice president of the RSPCA, and, you know,
president now, I think.
Yeah,
he's got this position to be doing something. Like, apparently he said, but it takes time to make things actually happen.
Yeah,
But then, like you're saying about this other stuff, it doesn't sit right, does it?
I mean, I get the argument. Like, you can say, okay, it's good to have someone on the inside because you can change from the inside, and I get all of that. But the only problem with that, if the person on the inside is not abolitionist, if they're not actually talking about rights, then it doesn't really work, because he's talking about how the animals are treated, welfare, not a mention of animal rights. I don't even know if he is abolitionist. So, like, that's problematic. Anyway,
the impression I got from it was that he was far too, well, I suppose not militant enough, perhaps. I don't know. It seemed like he was preaching to us to sort of say, just bide your time and pipe down a bit and we'll get there in the end. And I don't think Vegan Camp Out is the place to say that. If
you can't speak clearly there, where can you? I mean, if that's exactly, he's not talking to a room full of non-vegans. So
no, exactly, that's it. You know, the three of us, we all know that. Well, none of us expect that within our line of work we can make important changes to turn other people vegan instantly and all that sort of thing, and that's all fine. but he is actually in a position of control of the organization that defines basically what is acceptable ways to treat animals. And he's saying, don't push it. You're like, come on, man.
Yeah.
Either you're in or you're out. Let's go for it.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to be. I mean,
speech.
It's hard, isn't it? Because you want to. I think it's good that a movement is self-critical, right? We always have to kind of stay vigilant and think about our messaging and all of that. But you don't want to be too like complaining as well. So I'm always kind of feeling like, oh, I don't want to be one of those people who's always whinging. But at the same time, I think it's valid to have these conversations. So yeah, I'm happy that you guys agree with me.
Yeah, and I think we've said it before about like just camp out on its own. We've had Jordan on here, and he gets a lot of stick, a lot of trolley.
He really does
from everybody, but he gets it from our side of the fence as well. And people are going, you keep your camp out site is on a hunting ground or farmland, and it's like you try and find any land in the United Kingdom that isn't farmland or hunting ground. And then put a festival on it. It's not.
I think this year was they sort of. Oh, this year and last year was.
Yeah. And then he got on an airfield. He can't win.
No, that's it.
Yeah.
And also, think like I do get that argument that you shouldn't have it on a place where there's hunting and shooting and stuff. But also, like I buy my vegan food from Tesco, where there's a deli counter and aisles full of murdered animals, but I haven't got a vegan supermarket near me. So I'm supporting, by buying things in Tesco, I'm supporting inadvertently the meat and dairy industries. So
yeah, I mean, I think it's okay. I don't want to I think it's okay to have the criticism though, because I think we should always be like pushing to be better. And if it's like that's going to make him more cautious to choose a location, I think that can only be a good thing. And I think even with like this, it can feel a bit like, oh, nothing is perfect. But I think all the time veganism is getting easier. So I've had discussions with friends like, what is it that like I'm doing today, which new vegans in the future are going to be like, well, you're not doing enough. Like I was thinking about like like cinema and taxis, like a cinema. Like maybe in the future we'll have like vegan certification on films, because I don't, to use your money to pay for a film production where they're exploiting animals. Like I don't know that before I start watching the film, but maybe in future, some new BBFC certificate. But I think we've got to stay open-minded to criticism, like always. And I don't want to be, I don't think it's like, because you're criticizing, it's not meaning you think you're perfect. I think all of us have to keep thinking like, there might be things that we can keep pushing forward. And if we're doing that, we're having these discussions. It's not always like, don't talk about it, don't have the discussion. But to me, I think it's healthy, I think.
Yeah, yes, definitely. And constructive criticism is always, well, not always, but can be a positive thing. I think it's sometimes in the delivery and in the reception as well, because some people accept criticism in different ways, and especially when it's messages on a social media site. You don't always get the tone.
Exactly. That it's my biggest fear is becoming like a vegetarian. When it's like I'm doing enough. I can't when I'm doing street activism and you come across a vegetarian, it's like I'm doing enough already. Look at what everyone else is doing. I'm doing enough. I can't with that response. So I'm worried to become like that. So I've got to stay open to what the new vegans are saying.
Yeah, good shout. Good shout. Tell us about your street activism then, Giles. Who do you do that with?
So we have like a unofficial like AV, kind of anonymous, but it's not. I think it used to be official, but it's not anymore. But anyway, it's basically like the typical like setup, holding TVs, people outside. I prefer doing standing on the street and pointing to the TVs and having discussions with people.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's mostly what I do. I mean, we have done other stuff like. With Marlin, I don't know, she didn't talk about this in your podcast episode, but she should have done because it was fantastic. But we did something, Stockholm Vegans, we did something where we got a whole cinema. This was also in Plant-Based News. There was an article about it. You can read about it. We got a cinema in Stockholm to show Dominion to 100 people.
Wow.
What?
So over 100, right? So this was me, Marlin, some other people, like a big, not a big team, but like a relatively small number of people. And basically we managed to, it was around Halloween last year, right? So we advertised this secret screening, and I don't know, you have them in the UK, right? Secret screenings where you don't know what you're going to see. So we just advertise it as like really difficult to watch horror. Like we gave all the warnings, like, gory, all of that. So we're not going to get, people too upset.
People think they're going to go and see
yeah,
Nightmare on Elm Street or something.
yeah, exactly. So we did it on Halloween, and we got one of our activists actually worked in a cinema, a really beautiful, like vintage cinema in downtown Stockholm. So we managed to do it there, and set up all biletto and like all official like selling tickets and everything. And yeah, we managed to get 130 people. It was sold out, and they didn't know what they were going to see. And so yeah, that sort of thing was really exciting. And we had in the build up we made like advert like teasers and stuff to try and sell tickets. And we had Malin was like playing like the person in the cinema who was going kind of finding her seats, and then we had one of our activists who's quite an old lady. She's got like long grey hair, so she was like in a nightie, and we were filming the trailer, like this kind of teaser like video in the cinema to kind of like build up, and she was playing this kind of scary character. So we were trying to like set the mood of like okay. And yeah, it was really fun, having all people like different ages and passionate about veganism for this project. And yeah,
what sort
worked.
of response did you get? How many people stormed out and screamed at you?
Yeah, good question. So we had one person I remember early on storm out and said "F off" in our face. So there were some people who were not too happy, but then there were other people who left early who said to us like, "I understand why you did this," and weren't angry with us. They were just like, I get why you did this. I just can't watch any more of it, which I think is also a win, because it's like, I know people who've watched like 15 minutes of Dominion and like couldn't watch any more, and that's all I need to know, and I'm not paying for this anymore. So it's not necessarily like if they walk out early that was like, oh, they couldn't go vegan or whatever. And we also had goodie bags. So that's what I was talking about, like Violet sponsoring by Oatly. So we had like Lush and Oatly and a few I think it's fine to mention, but anyway, like basically we gave people as they walked out like a goodie bag with like vouchers for local vegan restaurants and all that. So even though it was like kind of like a difficult thing, we wanted to kind of leave it on a bit more of a positive, and we had activists in the foyer to have conversations. There were some people crying and upset in what they've seen. So yeah, it was really powerful, and lots of people had quite strong reactions to it. So yeah,
I bet
that was more kind of the creative kind of activism I guess we've done. But I don't want to take credit for it because it was lots of people in Stockholm. But yeah, that was fun.
Does sound incredible. Organising it on any level must have been a nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't.
To get a cinema to put a specific film on.
Yeah, I mean, it was great because we had an activist who works in the cinema, so that was the cinema knew what we were doing. Obviously, they had the projectionist who had to get the film and everything, so that had to work. We did get the national newspapers like afterwards, because they were like had these articles about people running out of the cinema because of vegan activists and all this stuff.
Brilliant.
Which was great publicity. And then because we were all anonymous, we didn't want to have any attachment to who we were. So they just had this like random like events email that we just set up to receive emails. And so we had like newspapers writing to us to give statements and stuff. But yeah, I mean, some of it was good, and we got some, good write-ups. But then there was other things where it was like some mum who was complaining about her daughter being upset or something. I mean, she was over the age to watch the film and stuff, but like that she was upset. But we think that she was actually her daughter. We're not sure, but there was one girl who was quite moved by it, and she probably wanted to go vegan. So I think it was more that the mum was upset that her daughter wanted to go vegan, and then
the mind wash.
Yeah, so the mum's then really angry with like, oh, these vegan activists. But anyway, I mean, it was. I think it was a good experience, and it wasn't. I mean, you say it was a nightmare, Wes, but it was. We were dressed up in like Halloween masks and stuff, selling tickets. So yeah, it was kind of like that, but it was fun as well. Yeah,
I bet.
Amazing, I love that. That is great activism. Like you say, even if people have stormed out within a few minutes, they've still seen something that might make them question their whole life.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Dominion's one of those films where a lot of people have, seen it, and that's been a big factor for them going vegan. So yeah, hope so.
I've seen about
10, 15 minutes of it.
not
Yeah,
even
that's
that.
the thing. A lot
I've
of
seen
people,
one or
yes.
two, and I couldn't watch anymore.
Yeah,
That
but a
was
lot
it.
of people, it's just like, and I think that comes back to what we were saying before, right? It's not like the methodology. That's all focusing on the method, right? Of like, oh, it's so cruel and the method and all that. And at some point, it's just like, oh, I don't know if I need to see all of this, because once you kind of connect it, it's like, well, even if you had a dog in your back garden and they had a great life and they were shot in the back of the head and they didn't feel any pain and all that, I would still be against that. So why am I watching pigs in gas chambers? I don't need to see like the worst, the worst, the worst.
We've
I
said
would
this.
still.
We've said it a lot that we're this side of the fence. We shouldn't need to watch these things, but we keep doing it.
Yeah.
Like to remind us of what we're doing.
I mean, yeah, it gives you fire and passion for activism, so I think that's good as well. Yeah.
So, what do you think was the biggest struggle for you since you've been vegan?
I don't think anything necessarily too much to do with like, my choice to be vegan or anything like that. I think it's more like social stuff. I guess that's maybe quite common, that it's difficult like talking to people that know you already, like before you were vegan, and then trying to explain to them that like your values have changed and this is what you think now, and that it can be quite difficult to, because I feel quite like every year I feel like even stronger that this is the right thing to do, that this all makes sense, and that can be quite hard to talk to people that just don't get it, or they don't want to see it, or they don't want to have the conversation. So yeah, I think socially that can be quite hard, but at the same time, I found people, in Stockholm here, and great group of activists and people, I socialize with, and yeah, that keeps me going. And I think that's really important as well for vegans to find that community, because it can be quite isolating. I think that's when you first go vegan, to if you feel that passionately about all of this and you don't have anyone else around you that kind of resonate with the same ideas, it can be really isolating. But yeah, that was probably the hardest thing. But now, it's pretty good.
Awesome. So, what did your friends and family think about it when you did tell them that you were vegan?
I mean, my family, I told them. So I was like on the plane. I was moving from Japan after that 14 years. I was moving to Germany, and then I said I was going vegetarian, right? So it was like, I think on the plane, it was like that was my last meat, meal or whatever. So I think when I said I'd go vegetarian, it was a bit like, but it wasn't too, out there. There's lots of vegetarians, so it wasn't a big deal. And then veganism, then it was like, oh God, it's gone even further. So yeah, I think the veganism was like, is a tougher pill for people to swallow, because it wasn't so much about like, I'm doing this thing about me and it's my preferences. It was more, this is my view about the world. And if I have this view about the world, it's not just about me, it's about what you're doing and other people. So then they, what's quite easy if someone says they're vegetarian, it's just like, well, you're just doing, your preference of diet or whatever. Veganism is not the same thing. It's not just about you. You're actually thinking about, if I'm sitting opposite someone that's eating the dead body of a pig, that bothers me, right? And I think that's quite hard when you've got, established relationships and family that you love and stuff.
Very true.
Did you find anything like changed physically or mentally when you made that change?
Not really. Not really physically. I guess discovering vegan junk food is I think I got quite healthy to begin with, because I was like cutting out dairy, like from vegetarian. I think that's not so healthy. So then it was like, okay, I got super healthy and fit, and then it was like, oh, I discovered vegan pizza and vegan. So I guess that's kind of like ups and downs in terms of physically, but not really that different, to be honest. And then, but mentally, I feel like more kind of like everything kind of makes sense to me a bit more. So I kind of had this theory that like because I look back at like old photos of when I was a kid, and I went to Zimbabwe when I was quite young, so I had quite an intense like experience, like around wildlife and other animals and all of that. And I look back at some of those like family holiday photos of me, like, I don't know, staring at a frog that I found in a some campsite or whatever, and it was like I feel like I was always probably like had this ideas of like veganism or like at least like respect for other animals, and then you kind of get I don't want to say indoctrinated because it sounds like bad to my family, but like at least, not just family, but like your teachers and everything around you. It's like normalizing this idea that we should be violent to pigs and kind to dogs and speciesism and all of that. So becoming vegan, it almost felt like you're almost like returning home in a way, like you feel more kind of peace, like, okay, this all makes sense now. And I think always through those years of like, not being vegan and having that slight, thing in the back of your mind where you think, oh, this doesn't quite make sense. I remember one, holiday where my sister, so it was my niece, she was watching like Peppa Pig on the TV, and then it was one of these kind of like rental homes, big like open plan kitchen. So my niece was watching Peppa Pig, and my mum was like behind me cutting up a pig, and I was just like standing in the middle of the room thinking, this is mad. Like, this doesn't make sense. So there's like things like that where now I feel like I've found, that this makes sense to me, and I guess that's an improvement, I would say.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's weird when you see stuff like that happening, isn't it? The disconnect from one thing to another.
Yeah.
Right under your nose. And
Yeah. All right. What's the best thing about being vegan?
About being vegan. So I think the best thing is, I mean, it sounds cliche, but like, I feel like you're moving like society forward, because I feel like there's been lots of progress with, justice movements and, people who opposed racism and slavery and homophobia and all of these, great points in history where you have people kind of pushing back at widespread injustices. And to be part of that, I think is like quite important. And I think it's great to feel like you're having, even if it's a small impact, having an impact on that. I think that's the biggest thing. And making people not just become vegan, but if you can get people to become vegan activists, if you think about the knock-on effect of that, it's huge. So yeah, that's, I think, the best thing.
Should we go quick fire?
Yeah.
Sure. Do I have to be quick with the answers as well?
No, not really. But we just changed the way we do things, and if you put it on my list as quick favourites.
Honestly, Giles, we've only done the questions in this order once before, and it wasn't that quick. So feel free, take as long as you want.
I'll blame the Wi-Fi speeds.
Okay, so what is your favourite quick meal? What's your go-to?
Favourite quick meal? I'd love to say like sweet potato roasted in the oven or something like that, but probably it's a tub of hummus from the supermarket. Because it's much quicker, right? So you just have, I don't know, some crisps and a tub of hummus. I love hummus, so yeah, that would probably be it.
I'd never had hummus until I went vegan, and even then it wasn't like day one vegan, right, here's a tub of hummus. I was always a bit kind of wary of it because I thought it was this weird stuff, and then
you'd be missing out. Yeah,
exactly. And then once I got into it, I was like, oh my God, this is like the most amazing thing in the world. I mean, it's just some chickpeas and tahini, and that's it.
And now they do different flavours of the stuff.
Yeah. Amazing. Anyway, that wasn't very quick fire. Right. Favourite vegan food product?
This feels like the same answer again, hummus for every question.
Hummus, yeah. No. Right, you're not going to be able to answer all of these.
No. All right, vegan food products. I thought that was the last question. Okay, vegan food products. Okay, so it has to be like a product that's like a produced product. Maybe there's a Swedish company, which I'm probably going to pronounce the name wrong because my Swedish pronunciation is terrible, but it's like Barta or Berta, and basically they do like locally grown, like whether it's like tempeh they're making or pea products, but they're really tasty, but they're not trying to be too close to like a Beyond Burger or something like that. It's more, you can kind of see the original ingredients in them, but they're super tasty, but they're not doing so well right now. So yeah, shout out to them in terms of business.
How do you spell that so I can tag them in the thing?
I'll write it to you because I don't want to get it wrong. Is that okay?
Okay. Yeah. I'll tag them in the.
Okay, I've got some in my freezer. I'll go and take a picture for you.
Check it out. Yeah. Awesome. Okay.
So, what is your favourite vegan not food product?
I've got some
toiletries, makeup. I've
got some like vegan Converse kind of boots that when I first went vegan, and they've got like vegan written all over the laces and stuff, and I quite like them because
No,
they kind of
wicked.
remind me of like, you know, when you first go vegan and you're just like, oh, I need to get some merch, and like yeah, so I've still got them. Yeah,
Are
I
they
need to
actually
tell
Converse?
everyone.
Or are they?
No, they're not. No, they're not Converse. They're like vegan. I think they were like online purchase, but yeah, they
Cool.
look.
Love that. Okay, good. All right. Oh, I've lost my spot. Okay, favorite vegan restaurants.
Okay, so I'm gonna have to go for Stockholm
Mhm.
again. But so there's one called Full Soul Vegan, and that's on like the kind of hipster island, you can call it, in Stockholm. It's like in the center, but it's like lots of like nice shops and cafes and all of that. And right in the middle of that, there's a really great vegan cafe called Full Soul Vegan. And they've got in big neon lights on the wall, they've got vegan for the animals. So, and they've got lots of like
wicked.
books and stuff about, like animal liberation and all of that. And the guy who runs it, he's Brazilian, I believe, Vinny. He's been vegan since the 90s. So he's like really interesting guy to talk to.
Wow, an ancient
And
vegan.
yeah, the food's amazing. Yeah, the food's amazing, and we did our Christmas party there with like vegan activists. So that he's quite like supportive of like the activist community. So it's really nice that having that connection to like it's not a huge place. It's very cozy and small, but yeah, it's really nice.
Awesome.
One more. So I did
Mhm.
say you said restaurants, right? Am I allowed one more?
Yep. Yeah.
So there's another place called Lao Wai, which is a Chinese restaurant in Stockholm, but it's all 100% vegan, and it's super tasty. It's great. It's a great place to take non-vegans as well. But it's a small place. It doesn't have many tables, and it gets booked up really quick. So it's very popular. But the food is amazing.
Days.
Awesome. Okay, I think Malin mentioned that one when she came on.
Yeah, I thought.
No, she got my one. Okay, I should have checked that.
No, it's still good.
So
Well,
it's a double recommendation. It must be good.
Yeah, exactly. That's a glowing recommendation. I've been there with Marlon. Yeah, it's good.
What about Herman's? That's my favourite.
Herman's is good. So you've been to Stockholm then?
Sorry, Wes. Yes,
You've
twice.
been? Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
I went in Herman's both times.
Yeah, Herman's is great. Actually, Herman's is the first. When I went to Stockholm like when I was still living in Germany, just as a business trip. When I was thinking about moving there, and like Herman's was like just down the road from an Airbnb I was staying. So that was the first my experience of like vegan restaurants, and it's a great spot. Like the view of the water and stuff. Yeah, it's a really nice place. So that's another good pick actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll get there someday.
Yeah,
We're
doing this vegan from Stockholm episode, right? You're going to get Oatly to sponsor. Yeah.
We'll get them to pay our flights.
As soon as the
not
money's in
flights, train journey. Train journey.
And who's your who are your favourite vegan people, celebrities, or just people that you know? Who inspires you?
Obviously not Chris Packham.
Yeah, I'm not going to say him, but yeah, I think I mean Earthling Ed is obviously like it's like everyone says Earthling Ed, but like he's one of the best. I think his sit down arguments, when he goes to universities and stuff, they're just so good to watch and like study as well for how to do outreach and stuff. So I really like his. To be honest, Earthling Ed, I'm not so into it when he's like, I understand why, that he gets quite angry at some company or something, and he's just talking to the camera in a YouTube video.
Yes.
To me, that's like, I don't know. I understand why he's angry, and I'm angry as well. But I feel like his best stuff is just that stuff where he sits down at a table with someone. So I love that. And yeah, who else? I really like Simon Amstel. I know he's not an activist, but he was at Camp Out this year. Yeah.
Yes.
And I love his. Have you seen his film Carnage, the documentary comedy?
I haven't yet.
No,
it's so good.
We saw him at Camp Out. Was it 2 years ago, Wes? We saw him at Camp Out, and I didn't know. I didn't twig that it was him and his film. I'd heard of Carnage, but never seen it. And then after that Camp Out 2 years ago, tried to find it, and I haven't been able to find it anywhere. So, still not seen it yet.
Yeah. Oh, you've got to see it. I think it's just fun. I mean, on my TikTok as well, I do a lot of I have like a playlist of like funny stuff. So I like, I know obviously it's a really dark topic, but I also like that kind of British sense of like, okay, you take a topic that's dark, but you also make, funny things out of it. And I think Carnage is brilliant because it kind of catches people off guard, the fact that it's a comedy and it's also talking about something that's quite serious. So yeah, I really like that. So yeah, I would say Simon Amstel.
His set at Camp Out 2 years ago just was
That was
so
hilarious.
funny. I mean, it was hilarious, full stop. But two, it was hilarious seeing all the people with young kids sitting in the tent, thinking like, "Oh my god, he's talking about bum sex," and
Yeah,
just
it
the
was
reaction
quite.
of all the people around us was just
It was
so.
quite spicy this year.
Yeah, that one
Okay.
2 years ago. It was. You say it was funny, or say it was hilarious, but it was wrong in every single possible
And
way.
you did have your kids with you as well, didn't you?
I had my kids with me, and the
Yeah.
two eldest,
Yeah,
the
I
two
think
eldest
to be.
were only like 14 and 13. They
Yeah.
got it,
Yeah.
but it was all. And then our youngest, she was just like, "What is he going on about?"
I do
don't
think
even-
maybe Camp Out would help on the schedule to put a little like age guidance maybe on some of the things that
Yeah.
might help.
Yeah, it walked out and he said, "I'm assuming you all think I'm coming out to do some activism. I'm not. I'm doing some of my stand-up. So prepare yourselves."
Oh, it was great. It was great. Awesome. Right. Okay. Where are we? So, what advice would you give to anyone who's thinking about going vegan?
Anyone's thinking about going vegan, I would say focus on the why more than the how, because I think there's so much attention, like when we talk about new vegans or people going vegan, like, you know, the 30-day vegan challenge or all these like, oh, how are you going to do it? How are you going to cook? Like, to be honest, that stuff, you can just search Google. It's not that difficult, right? If you want to do it, you can find the information, all that stuff. I think what people don't really connect with fast enough is like why you're doing it. And that's really what I think is so important, because once you've established why you're doing this, you're then going to have that drive and that motivation to solve all of those practical things because you know why you're doing it, right? And I think a lot of people, they have the kind of inkling and they know a bit why they might want to do this, but they jump straight. And also as vegans, we're often telling people to jump straight into like, oh, this is how you can make ice cream with frozen bananas and like all this stuff, like, which is great, but it's like you're not going to be motivated to do that unless you know why you're doing it. Like unless you looked at the dairy industry and seen cows being raped and having their babies taken away and all of that stuff, that every time I'm in the supermarket, that's making me think, oh, I'm never going to pay for that.
Yes. That's it. It makes it a lot easier and you never feel tempted to go back if you're thinking about, like you just said, you know, cows being raped and their babies taken away. You're never going to think, oh yeah, but I really want some dairy milk, because the thought of what goes into making that dairy milk, other chocolate is available, but the thought of what goes into making that dairy milk is enough to make you think, no, you're all right, thanks. I'll stick to my.
I think people have this misconception that vegans are like super, I don't know, like really really good at sticking to rules and all of this, and like, I don't know, I don't feel like that at all. I mean, I'm in other parts of my life, I can be very easy to like, I don't know, if I was like eating chocolate or whatever, like I wouldn't care. I'll like break, you know, diet rules or whatever it might be. But when it comes to that, it's like it's not that we're really strict with ourselves or anything like that. It's just that it's a very clear, you know, I don't feel like we're fighting our intentions there at all.
You're right, it's the motivation for doing it, isn't it? With any change that you do in your life, you've got to have the right motivation. You know, somebody will give up smoking because they've been diagnosed with lung cancer. They're going to give up this thing because of this thing. It's if you're going to make the change to veganism, you've got to know why you're doing it. What's going to make you think about that every day, every morning that you wake up, instead of how am I going to do it. I completely agree with you. Really do. What they should do is,
absolutely.
You know, you just mentioned there like people giving up smoking. And on cigarette packs now they put like infected lungs and stuff, don't they?
Mm.
They should do that on packets of meat, shouldn't they?
Yeah.
Like an animal being hung upside down while its blood's trickling out of its throat and stuff.
Well, what about the farmers?
Yeah. I mean, I think the difference to be like with the smoking or the alcohol or all that, it's like even if you slipped up, right, it's only you that's being affected. So I think I'm not a smoker, but let's say if I was a smoker, I don't think I would be particularly good at like sticking to not smoking or whatever it might be, just personality type. So because it's only me that's affected, it's not really like, if you eat a whole tub of ice cream, or if you smoke and you're not supposed to be, you wanted to give up smoking, it's like, okay, but I'm just like cheating myself. When it's someone else, that's like, for me, it's
you've got a responsibility.
Totally different ball game. So it's not. Anyway, that's my thoughts.
Yeah, 100%.
Awesome.
That's why we're here.
Love it.
So we started this because of us finding out the term dystopia, the anguish that we feel living in a world full of carnists.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you have any hope for the future? Do you think there is any?
I do. Absolutely, I've got hope. You know, when you talk to people doing activism all the time, you see that, like, people getting it and the connection and the spark. And I think, I feel like we're maybe gearing up to like a second wave as well when it comes to veganism. I feel like, you know, there was obviously a lot of people maybe around the same time as me, around five. You talked to a lot of vegans who went vegan around 2018, 2019. At least I do seem to find a lot of vegans went vegan around that time. But I feel like, you know, there's something happening, and I feel like we could be gearing up for a second wave of veganism. And I think the arguments are so solid. It's going to happen at some point. It's not something where we're like, oh, you know, this is inevitable in my mind that veganism will win out. Maybe not in my lifetime, but I think we're going to get closer and closer.
Yeah, I mean, I was mentioned to Matthew just before we started. Did you see the thing in Plant-Based News today?
No, don't think so.
They said, hang on, 8.6 million people in the UK are now following a meat-free diet. In addition, 6.4 million Brits plan to adopt a meat-free diet in 2024. If they do, the UK could have 15 million people eating meat-free by 2025.
Yeah, it's amazing.
That's a large number. That's a big number, that.
Yeah, didn't they say like there was another statistic not long ago? I think they were talking about like the 1 million up or something vegans in the UK.
It was 1.8, wasn't it? Beginning of the year, 1.8.
Yeah, it was like 4% of the population or something. It's crazy. I mean, I don't know how accurate those things are, but if it's always good, right? If we're talking about the numbers going up, so yeah, definitely, it feels like things like that make me feel like we're on the cusp of something.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's true. It does feel like it's on the up. Like most people know, not most, a lot of people will know a vegan in some way or another. I would.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just look at like how normal it is these days in like vegetarian options kind of disappearing and being replaced with vegan options, and restaurants all over, and so I think it's definitely become more like a mainstream thing.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think the whole like there's a lot of backlash to that, to say, oh, the decline in like Beyond Burger and all those companies. I don't really believe that it is indication of decline in veganism, because I think it's more just people, you know, cost of living, buying whole food, plant-based more. Like the low-cost supermarkets now offering rival products which taste, you know, great as well. So that's just gonna happen. It used to be that you had these, you know, one or two brands that were really famous and came in and took all the market share. Well, now you're going to get like Aldi and Lidl or whoever is just going to see that money being taken in and think, well, we'll make a brand of oat milk, or we'll do, you know, like Beyond Burger's kind of rip off, but half the price. So yeah, of course people are going to buy that stuff.
100%. You know, it was around, I think it was this time last year, there was a lot of, I mean, the point of it was there was a lot of vegan restaurants shutting down. But and there was like, well, if vegan restaurants are shutting down, does that mean this is the end for veganism? And actually, there was loads of restaurants shutting down, not just vegan ones.
Yeah.
So it's not just the Beyond Burgers and stuff that are struggling. Every business is struggling. They've all got to be fighting their own game at the end of the day.
Yeah, and the industry is desperate for examples of like, oh, the vegan bubble has burst. You know, you hear like they're gagging for it, right? But in reality, you see the, you know, Arla is making like plant-based milk now. I think they're selling it in the UK as well, but certainly in Sweden they've got plant-based milk and yogurts they're releasing, you know, this year. So obviously they're worried, right? They're worried about, you know, what's happening with people's attitudes shifting. So I think we just, you know, keep pushing forward.
That's it. I think so. And it will take time. I do think we have to be realistic. I don't want to sound too much like Chris Packham, but I do think we have to be realistic with how quickly we can get things done.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
we are moving forwards at least.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I'm kind of like not so with the Chris Packham kind of like baby steps approach is because I think you're right, Matthew, that it is going to take a long time, but I don't want to make it any slower, right? Even
No.
like what we should still be talking about this like a moral emergency. Like I'm often saying to people, every day that you're not vegan, there are animals being shot in the head for you, and that is the reality. I mean, it sounds harsh, but that is the reality. This is a moral emergency. And so I think we need to keep talking like that, like this moral emergency. And even if we're not, it's not like we're naive. We don't think that everyone who listens to us is going to, listen to that and then be vegan. But if we are to water down and dilute the message to these baby steps that people keep saying, oh, you need to water it down because, oh, you have to be realistic. What happens? Those people listen to the watered down baby steps and they only go halfway to the baby step. Right, so then basically we're just like slowing down the movement for no reason. Like, let's just be honest. Yeah, let's just be honest and say like every day that you're not vegan, there are animals being shot in the head for you. Like, it's not. I'm not being naive by saying that. It's not that I think that everyone hears it and thinks, "Oh, I'm going to be vegan now." It's just that I don't want to slow this down any slower than it's going already.
There's I've been in a lot of discussions about like the whole like the activists, the likes of Joey Carbstrong and stuff, where they're. I mean, Joey's a legend. I love him to bits myself, but he can be quite aggressive in his mannerisms sometimes, whether that's his past or neurodiversity or whatever it is. My argument for that is that you've got to have a level of activism that is that far that way. Yeah. Because nothing got changed. Nothing's ever been changed by people going, oh, can we have this, please? The suffragettes didn't get what they wanted without kicking off. Slavery didn't change because without people kicking off. You've got to have that level, otherwise it's never going to work.
Yeah, absolutely, and I totally agree. I think Joey, what he's done in exposing gas chambers, and I think he's also got a lot better at speaking. Like if you listen to him, like 5 more years ago when he was on TV, he would get very angry and not really communicate very well. You saw like was it the Oxford University debate he did? Like incredible, right? And even like his TV debates with like Piers Morgan, all those people, he's got so much better at that. So I think, Joey's fantastic. And you do need that fire, you need that anger to make you, speak up for the animals. Yeah, I totally agree. We need it all, and not everyone is going to have that approach. The people we're talking to are diverse as well, right? So we're going to have some people who respond better to different approaches. I don't think we need to kind of dilute ourselves. There's one like did you see you had Molly on here, right, from Elwood's? Yeah. Did you see her stand at Vegan Campout?
Yes,
she was at Vegan Campout this year. Yeah. Yeah, so I asked her, like, can I just do for the TikTok, like, record? Maybe you can check this on my TikTok after. But I basically said, oh, can you just act and I'll pretend I'm like believing in this stand just to make a video. And I put that on TikTok, and it got like 100,000 views, and the comment section is full of people saying like, she should go to jail, like this is absolutely disgusting. And you see all of these comments, and then I'm thinking like all this tone policing of veganism, like, you should really speak more gently, you shouldn't say that, all this stuff. And I'm reading these comments about, well, when the victims are dogs, I'm not even saying half this stuff. They're saying about like calling about violence towards the dog farmer and like put them in, the most horrendous like stuff that I would never say about pig farmers or chicken farmers. And yet we're being told to like water down and dilute our language. Like, come on, like what are you talking about? The only reason you want us to dilute the language is because you want to carry on doing what you're doing, right? That's the only reason you want us to dilute the message. It's not about, this fake like, oh, I think you'll be more effective if you do it this way. Like, it's not. Yeah. It's that they want to carry on doing what they're doing and they don't want to be disturbed.
Yeah, it's like pipe down over there.
Yeah. Give you salad recipes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
I mean, if you ask the people who are still paying for that, like if you ask them what would be the ideal method of activism, they'd probably tell you, you should stand in a corner giving out salad recipe leaflets to people who already agree with you, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because of course they don't want you to be effective, right? So they like there's this kind of fakery about like, oh well, I think you'd be more effective if you did it this way, but I don't buy that anymore. Yeah.
No. And the only thing that has ever changed anything has been effective protest.
Yeah, non-violent. That's very important, right?
Yes,
Non-violent.
absolutely, yeah.
But we can be, talk to the truth, right? Just talk about what's happening.
Yeah, that's it. We've got nothing to hide, have we? There's
Yeah.
the famous thing, like people take their kids to a farm, but they never take them to a slaughterhouse.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to ask you actually, Giles, if you don't mind me asking, what do the comments look like on your posts, and how do you deal with the trolling folk?
I quite like using the trolling, like kind of to make a joke back at them or something like that. So sometimes I'll use trolling comments, or if they make some, I don't know, crop deaths or something like that, I'll take that comment, because on TikTok you can reply to a comment to make a video. I mean, probably it's the same on Instagram now. Yes. But anyway, so I quite like using that, because then you can okay, that's a common thing that people will write on every vegan. But when we say it, we feel like, I've said that 100 times. I've explained crop deaths and why that doesn't make any sense. But for them, maybe it's the first time they come across a vegan to actually rebut their argument, because they've, listened to a Joe Rogan podcast and they thought, oh yeah, this is how we can debunk vegans. So if you put that as a video, you get not just a reply to the person who wrote it, you also get all those other people viewing it who maybe had the same thought that crop deaths is a good argument against veganism. So I think it's just about trying to use the negatives in a positive way, and also kind of making it funny sometimes as well. I think there's you could use humor to kind of diffuse that.
Yeah. No, Giles, we're a small podcast, but we've just started attracting a few comments here and there from trolls. So we feel like now we've almost made it now.
Oh, that's amazing.
People are noticing us.
It is. You're not doing it right if you don't have any trolls. Yeah, you've got to get some trolls.
That's it. Yeah, we're not worried about listeners, but we are worried about trolls. That's what we're aiming for.
Yeah. Maybe you should invite one of them on. That would be interesting.
Couldn't do it.
We've thought about it. I guess that would.
You'd have to do a spin-off episode, which is not how you vegan. It will be
how I hate vegan podcast.
How you kill pigs, or I don't know.
For me, I don't mind. I don't mind the calm discussion with friends and about it. And even when they're taking the piss at me and they're coming at me with all the bingo stuff, I'm like, yeah, whatever. I just ignore it. But actually having to get into a specific debate on here with someone doing that, I think I'd crumble.
I think you'd be okay. I mean, the thing is, we're dealing with there's only 20 arguments that people keep using all the time. So actually, as a vegan, it's relatively easy to argue against these people, because there's good answers to all of them, all the crop deaths or whatever nonsense argument they're trying to use. So I feel like it's. I'm not suggesting you do that on your podcast, but like TikTok, I do live debates right on TikTok, and it's not as difficult, I don't think. I think vegans are so worried about humiliation, because it is, like I said at the beginning, it's quite isolating, and you feel like nobody quite understands what you're doing. But I think if you just learn, I mean, maybe that's also something for all of us, is just learning those arguments, the easy comebacks, and I think you can really make people think in those moments. So yeah, we've got to talk to the non-vegans.
Yeah. We need a bit of evangelism, I suppose, isn't it? In a way, going out and spreading the good word.
Otherwise, it's an echo chamber, isn't it? We just talk to each other and oh, isn't it terrible? But yeah, we've got to engage with those people and also recognise that we were in their position at some point, right?
Absolutely.
We went.
Yeah, definitely. Cool.
Fantastic. Giles, that's been excellent. Thank you so much for joining us. Really
Thanks so much. Yeah, it was a really nice chat. Thank you.
Yeah, and we'll look forward to seeing more of your TikToks and your evidence of your activism on the streets of Stockholm.
Yeah, thanks so much. It was great to talk to you guys.
Awesome. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
There's nothing better than a hunk of prime Labrador steak, wonderfully marbled. And that is almost entirely dependent on how it's produced. Elwood's Organic Dog Meat has complete control of this entire journey. So I'm here at Elwood's farm to find out a little more about it.
Welcome to Elwood Farms.
Thank you very much, Elwood.
I hear you do a bit of barbecuing.
I do a little bit of barbecuing every now and then, yes. From a chef's point of view, consistency is key for everything.
It doesn't matter if it's a Rottweiler ribeye, a Pyrenees mince, or a lab sirloin.
You can always tell when the dog comes from a place where it was well reared. And every step has to be right, doesn't it? Oh, you should see these guys. So, from an Elwood's point of view, there's complete traceability.
Absolutely. Unrivaled traceability, so it's fine.
Every single piece of dog meat.
Yeah, from pub to farmer's market.
Everything the dog's been fed.
Everything about it.
For each dog.
Yeah, only Marks and Spencer's and Whole Foods do this.
Where else can people order from?
From elwooddogmeat.com. That's ELWOOD dogmeat.com.
For top quality meat from dogs for people. Meat that's local, sustainable, and humanely harvested. There's only Elwood's Organic Dog Meat. They seem pretty friendly, don't they? They're more responsive to me than my kids, to be honest.
He was
That
lovely.
was a good chat.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just jealous that people live in Sweden or go there.
We'll go there. One day we'll get there, Wes. One day you'll get there. Maybe
No.
we will have to start up this world tour.
That's it. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It was. Yeah, I enjoyed that. It got not heated. It was quite debatable at the beginning. I like that. That was enjoyable.
Yes.
Mostly because we were all on the same page.
Yeah. It could have been a bit awkward, but no, it was good.
No, it was really good.
It was.
And,
It
yeah, I
was
enjoyed
good.
that.
Well, thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed that. And definitely go and check out Vegan Design on TikTok. There's some, there really is some great videos on there. And yeah, we will be back next time. But if you want to get in touch, what's the best thing to do? Is
the message on Instagram is a good one. At How I Vegan Podcast. Or they can email us at howiveganpodcast@gmail.com.
love it.
Don't be horrible. Fed up of horrible people already. Just be nice. If you got nothing nice to say, don't say anything.
Yes, got it.
If you can be anything in this world, be kind.
Yes, and
Thoughtful.
likewise, don't be a dick.
If you can be anything in this world, be kind. # don't be a dick.
Exactly.
Thanks
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, cheers.
See you next time.
Bye.